Hey everyone, it's Christy. It is my hangout with my patrons, and this week I have three wonderful patrons with me: Matthew, Lonely Wolf, and Tom. We're just going to get right into it. So I guess first, can I check in with everybody? Can we go around the room? Maybe we'll start with Lonely Wolf, because you're farther away in Australia and things are less dire.
Yes, it's still concerning. It's just because of the because I've got a very dear friend of mine that I talk to every day on Discord, and she lives in Fargo, so she's feeling the anxiety quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. From the COVID issues?
From the COVID issues, because I know that Fargo was hit, or North Dakota was hit quite bad with but then also with the protests or whatever. So she's a bit. I guess when it's fortunate because in Australia everything is so strict. I mean, even if I get a butter knife out, I'd probably have the police on my door. That's how. Like we're not exactly weaponized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's very different from what you see just ordinary people walking around with open carrying in other countries.
Well, the protesters that I've seen that are protesting the murder of black people are not carrying weapons, but the protesters of needing haircuts, they're carrying weapons.
Mm-hmm. Matthew, how about should we go around? But you, Lonely Wolf, sorry, you talked about how your friend was, but you didn't say how you were.
I'm feeling better. It was fortunately I was able to do some of my work from home because I've got sort of two things going on. Like on every Monday I do math tuition, and so I was doing that online for the last few weeks, and then finally the center opened up that I work at, so I get to see the students face to face. And then my other position was working in the healthcare, because I'm sort of, one of my other things, nobody knows about this, but I sort of have a fast typing speed, so I've always wanted to become a data entry person. So I work as it's sort of like a health organization, like a public health organization, and I sort of go through a lot of spreadsheets, word processing, and that sort of stuff. And because of the COVID, there was a lot of people working from home, so I wasn't really able to do that. So, next week I'm actually finally going to be able to see, my colleagues again.
That'll be nice. It might feel a bit strange being around people again, I think. I haven't reintegrated into society, but I'm expecting it's going to be, I'd just be skittish, like a feral cat.
Yeah. I mean, I did have a facepalm moment on because I didn't know what was it, an organ grinder?
Yes.
Because I saw a video and it was someone cranking something, but I didn't have the audio. So when they said organ grinder, I thought, okay, the other organs, it was like a sausage mobile where they grind meat or something like that, and they sell sausages and I thought, okay, that's a bit odd.
Yeah, mine was much nicer.
And then I heard the noise. then I actually turned the audio on, and I thought, oh, okay, that's what it is.
Yeah. I randomly had this organ grinder. I put it up on Twitter, who came down our street. And I heard his music before I saw him because of foliage and stuff. But then he was making his way down the road. So I made a point of leaning out of my window, which is not on the first floor. I'm a couple floors up. And I dropped him down a €5 note because I didn't want to go down and talk to him. I wasn't going to go down all those flights of stairs and just go. So, but he had his cap ready and he was watching it and trying to catch it in his cap. And I think that's kind of, he was used to that. So, that was a little spot of random German life I had that I put on Twitter. Well, good. I'm glad that you are things are going well and you guys are opening up a little bit and trying to find a new normal, as it were.
Yes.
Yeah. Matthew, how are you?
I'm okay. Not much change since last month. Maryland is starting to do a little bit of opening up, but because I'm actually in the DC suburbs, we're not as open as the rest of the state is, which is fine. The office where I work had plans to open up tomorrow, but it doesn't seem like that's happening because no one's sent out a plan yet. So I'm assuming since there's no plan because it was supposed to be a phased approach and whatnot. And the problem for us is, since I'm a contractor, my team, there's 7 people on my team, and we have 3 desks.
Oh.
So
Were you
we're
supposed to
hot
hot desking?
bunking.
Oh,
Which is why I
yeah.
normally, I work from home 3 or 4
Mm-hmm.
days a week normally under normal circumstances, and that's why, because there isn't room for everyone to be there all the time. But that is, even in a normal year, when you hot bunk desks like that, that's like a vector for flu transmission
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
good year. I can't
Yeah.
imagine that's very
No.
good right now. So
Yeah.
the longer we wait, the happier I'll be when it comes to that. But there are a few projects we're trying to get done while there's no one there in the office, network upgrades and such. But we're still waiting for some parts to arrive. And of course, parts is a bad thing. Like right now, we're in the midst of, I don't know if any other countries have noticed this, but especially electronics, there is, like, all the warehouses have been emptied out of electronics because there's a massive shipping problem right now.
Mhm.
Like, there are containers and containers and containers of all various kinds of electronics, from enterprise down to consumer, that are just sitting on docks in China waiting to leave
Mm-hmm.
because there aren't enough ships. And because passenger air travel has gone down, that's killed like 40 to 50% of freight air, because a lot of transatlantic and transpacific flights carry freight in their bellies that just
Yep.
aren't happening right now. So, and then there's always like a little bit of a insanity around Chinese New Year, which is usually fine because that's when Western demand kind of drops off after Christmas and whatnot. But demand didn't actually drop off as much as it normally did. And I've heard places, like some vendors were like, "Oh, we know when the stimulus checks started hitting people's checking accounts because they started buying stuff." Which, is what a stimulus is supposed to do.
Yeah.
But
Precisely. Yeah.
there wasn't enough product to keep
Yeah.
up demand. So so especially in my field, IT, computers, electronics, the pricing is going nuts right now just because there is no supply to meet the demand. And everyone's hoping that the shipping will get back on track starting in June, July. So we'll see. But right now is not the best time to buy stuff if you're tracking prices on things. So we're running into that problem because we're waiting for some parts that are desperately required for this installation, and it's kind of like a race. It's like, are we going to get these parts in before we have people showing up in the office? Because these are the kinds of upgrades where it's just easier when no one's there, because we can turn off the network and not get yelled at.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And just being able to leave the network off for a week while we just rip out everything means our installation will just go that much better, as opposed to having to like piecemeal it. Like, okay, we got permission to get 8 hours of work done on a weekend. That's always a hassle. So it's right now it's just a race. It's like, is the stuff we need in a shipping container, which it probably is, but is it on a ship yet? And is that ship heading towards the U.S. yet? And
Yeah.
so those
Literally
are
global
questions.
tracking.
Yeah. So that's my work situation right now. Personal life, nothing's changed because I haven't really seen anyone other than online right now.
Yeah. Everything is online interactions. Well, more of it than ever before. And Tom, give us a Tom update.
Well, my can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah.
It just good. I don't know. It seemed weird listening to me.
It's got quiet.
Yeah. I'm nothing. In a lot of ways, nothing much has changed in my life because I don't do much anyway. I don't go out much. Can't afford to, and there's not much to do around. Immediately in my village. 350 people. So not much has changed there. The biggest issue I've had with this COVID business personally has been I haven't been able to see my son in 3 months. It's going on 3 months, and that is difficult. I normally see him at least once a month, and not being able to see him is kind of rough.
Yeah.
My otherwise, I got my stimulus check and bought a computer.
Oh, wow.
Well, I needed it. It was I don't know.
So you're one of the people affecting demand now.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I probably took some of your supply. No, actually not. I got a desktop, $500 and some desktop.
Well, that's, yeah.
It's quite nice. Solid state drive, instead of a hard drive. So.
Did you have all kinds of fun searching for it and deciding on the model and picking it out? And did you?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. I went online. I went to several, best computers under a certain number of dollars.
Yeah.
And I looked at several of the sites, and I think 3 of 5 said, this model is either the best or in the top 5.
So what did you end up with?
An Acer, I don't know what the hell. Acer TC88 5 UA92. So now you know.
Acer would have been enough, but now we have the details.
Yeah, half terabyte SSD, 12 gigs hard drive, 12 gig RAM. Which is up 3 times what I had before. And I had hoped to get 16 or more, but this is fine.
Yeah. Does it feel like a Ferrari compared to your other?
Oh yeah. I'm kind of used to it now. So when something does slow down just a little bit, I get impatient. But so much better than what it was before. So but the thing is, when I set it up, I changed my desk around entirely. I had a bunch of stuff that I needed to move, and I twisted my back the wrong way.
Oh, no.
This was 2.5 weeks ago, and in the last couple of days, I've just started to feel like I probably won't be in total agony if I move wrong. So I'm just starting to get to the point where I need to do stuff. Otherwise. So I mean, it's been, that. It's just been irritating and painful that way. A little depressing not to be able to do so much when the spring is happening. The seeds that I saved from my sunflowers for the last, I've been saving for the last 10 years and been breeding so that they're all black seeds. The ones that I saved from last year didn't grow when I put them in pots. Pots to get them started, so I had to order some new seed, and so I'm going to be about 3 weeks late planting my sunflowers this year.
It's been pretty cold there, hasn't it? I don't know how sensitive they are to it, but
no, it's been fine to plant. Okay. It's been above freezing for for several weeks.
There was that snowstorm in May, though, right? Was there a snowstorm in early May? I thought
March,
maybe parts of the States.
Late April, early May.
Yeah. Anyway,
we got some. It didn't last.
Okay.
It wasn't anything like what we had several years ago when we really got hit with the 2 feet of snow and all the power went out for 24 hours. It wasn't that. But anyway, so that's pretty much my life.
Your hair's getting long in the back.
Yeah. It is.
I was like, he's kind of getting a mullet going on there.
Yeah, I'm thinking of taking my rifle and going down to the courthouse and telling people that they need to reopen, because that apparently is what white people do.
Oh God, white people suck.
We do.
We do. Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna get long enough. You're gonna be able to pull it back into a ponytail. Get a little tiny rubber band, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I have had it that long before, but I don't look good in it. I
you would just assume walk up haircut.
Oh Jesus! You had to say that. Oh boy.
Well, if your mustache gets bigger, you can start sporting the Wilford Brimley look.
Yeah, well, I can't grow it too much bigger because otherwise it would affect the mask. I shaved
Mm-hmm.
I shaved my beard so that I would have them be able to wear the mask right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And
right. Okay.
uh, so I see all these people around with full beards and wearing a mask, and I'm thinking that's not helping as much as you think, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. And how is mask wearing in your community?
Depends on where you go.
Yeah, my dad said the same thing.
Go to Aldi, and the most people are wearing masks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all the employees are, but most customers at Aldi are wearing masks. About 50% of people at Walmart grocery are wearing masks, and the Fleet Farm, which I think you know what Fleet Farm is, Christy.
Yeah.
Fleet Farm is like a huge, beautiful hardware store with all kinds of farm and
My dad calls it.
farm.
Well, no, he calls it the man mall.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place for people to go, and it has housewares but
It
it's
has.
mostly
I saw
lumber.
camouflage lingerie at Fleet Farm.
Well, that's fitting. That makes sense.
That's the kind of thing you get at Fleet Farm.
Yeah, at Fleet Farm, the mask percentage is down around 10%,
Oh, wow.
and half of the people wearing masks have it under their nose, so that it's not doing anything at all. And I've seen several people without masks just cough,
Oh.
just without covering their mouth with anything, just cough out into the middle of people.
My aunt told me a story. She was at a grocery store and some person was there without a mask. And not only were they not wearing a mask, they then leaned over and were looking at the produce and just coughed.
Oh, Jesus.
Exactly. Yeah.
We need to cull the species.
Yeah. Well, apparently this is a self-selecting cull for certain people. But I think it was in Menards, my dad said, like, they have a policy on the door, like, you have to wear a mask to get in. But he said, like, when you go over to Cops, which is a grocery store, then it's like 50-50. But, I'm going out in Germany. When I go down to the kiosk, which is at the end of my road, just like a little corner shop, I guess you call it. Sort of like if you took a gas station shop, but you took away the petrol and the gasoline and all the other stuff. It's just, snacks and things.
So a bodega.
But yeah, kind of. I guess in New York, that's what you would call it, yeah. They only let one person in at a time, and you have to wear a mask. And when I go to the grocery store, everyone's wearing a mask. And when I go on the train, everyone's wearing a mask. Or, they're on their phone talking with their mask down, but they should be wearing their mask. Yeah, like compliance here is probably 85 to 95%. In stores where there's like employees, it's 100%. But in like places where people self-monitor, it drops a little bit. But just culturally, like and you know what? I was talking to my dad, because I talk to my dad every Sunday. I get up and I talk for 2 hours on my show for a Sunday, and then I wait and I talk to my dad, and then sometimes I'll do a happy hour. I'll talk to you guys. I talk a lot on a Sunday. Anyway, what was I going to say?
Your dad.
My dad said, what did he say? What was I talking about?
I don't know. You talked to him.
Damn it. What was I saying before I got off on my tangent?
Masks.
You were talking about masks.
Compliance with masks.
And compliance, yeah. What was it? I can't remember. It's gone now. Sorry. I got all. Yeah, go ahead.
Another issue. Well, we're starting to reopen too, and the bar next door to me that has been closed for, since late March, reopened 2 days ago, and there is not a single mask. And there is absolutely no social distancing. So if we get, if someone has COVID in that bunch, because they hang out there for a long time, they hang out there for hours and hours in an enclosed space. There is a patio outdoors, but most of the people are hanging out inside. If somebody gets COVID, there's going to be an outbreak in my little town.
Yeah.
And these are all people that are culture warriors against the mask, the tyranny of the mask. This is all.
Oh, I remembered what I was going to say. We were comparing case rates and deaths in the United States and Germany. So Germany has 88 million people about. The United States 220 something, 230. Sorry, 3 million, 300. That'd be 300 million, 320, 330. So Germany still has under 9,000 deaths. And yesterday they reported 230 some new cases. The United States has, on the same day, now has 105,000 deaths and reported 23,000 new cases. So even though Germany has kind of been doing relaxation of the restrictions longer, our new infection rate is just so much. It's like 10 times. It was what in the U.S. Is for what we are, and it's just really ridiculous. Like how much faster it's spreading across the country now, because of the way that it's been politicized and been the focus of right-wing conspiracy theories, and. Of course, Trump is leading that. So, I just, I feel much safer here than in a lot of places. Well, maybe New Zealand is safer. I think that's about it.
Well, Australia's been doing fairly well, as I understand it. Is that right, Lonely Wolf?
Yeah, and especially because my state is Queensland. And so that's kind of it's because we're sparsely populated compared to other places. And unless you're kind of in the city center of, let's say it's Melbourne or Sydney, then we might have problems. But in other places, it's more sparsely populated. So it's
how's Brisbane?
There hasn't been that many. It hasn't been a large number of cases because I think they're relatively safe, and Australia and New Zealand are relatively safe compared to the. It seems to be in the places where it's, and that's probably obvious. Where it's heavily populated.
Yeah, it's where it's obviously you get you get a higher a chance of transmission because of just proximity.
Yeah. And social distancing. I mean, we've obviously, because it's sort of a unique thing. I mean, I don't want to, because I feel like whenever I speak, I've got to say, okay, not all Americans. There's a lot of smart people over there, but it seems to be a problem with authority.
Yes. Even when it's in their own interest, they're defiant for the sake of it. Yeah.
But they are selective on what authority they're defying.
Yes.
Because they accept the authority from Trump as well. A lot of people choose to accept Trump's authority as absolute, and then look at governors or mayors who are doing something different and saying, "Well, fuck you. We're independent citizens. We don't need to follow your rules."
Yeah, they're happy to use the power of the state to enforce their worldview on other people, but they don't want something that doesn't conform to their worldview, even if it's in their safety interests, to impinge on their haircuts or getting cupcakes or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes. So
rugged individualism.
Yeah, built on slavery and stealing other people's land. Such individualism when you steal it, and that's actually sorry. So Lonely Wolf was there in the chat today. For me, I did a show today on basically just kind of grappling with how can white people do better, because there are, I just want to give acknowledgement. I have seen white allies at the protest and putting their bodies right there alongside other people when confronting the police and engaging in civil disobedience or just nonviolent protest, whatever they're doing. But it just seems like we have a community of Black Americans who are crying out for justice. And they're marching for justice. And yet they have a white-dominated police force attacking them. They have white supremacists trying to undermine their movement. And also allegations that white sort of socialists or anarchists are using the opportunity to destroy property. And it's I can understand when they wanted to say...
Not just leftists.
Right, like I said, white supremacists who are in there and agitating too. Yeah.
Okay.
So the Boogaloo guys. Right, showing up, or just showing up armed and trying to get it kicked off. But basically, at every turn, there are white people fucking it up for Black people who are trying to make the issue about justice. And like I said, there are white allies who are trying to do right. But just I'm so frustrated with white people right now So,
It was from the impression that I got. I watched this footage and I see all the Twitter, and I almost don't even think it was. I'm almost thinking it did. It didn't even seem like a Black Lives Matter event. It seemed like it had been taken over because there were so many times where, the instructions given by Black Lives Matter organizers were, put in place and just ignored by people who are either they were the white supremacist sort of people who've infiltrated, or number two, they're just these sort of anarchist groups who are just out for their own sort of special interests. So it sort of happened in Fargo because that's the one that I'm sort of following the closest because I've got a dear friend of mine who lives there, and that's what the BLM protesters, they'd organised that, and the police force in Fargo, because of the nature of Fargo, it's a little bit, the dynamics are a little bit more peaceful. So the police officers and the organisers, they collaborated together to put together the protest event, and just to hear a Black Lives Matter organizer, the one who coordinated this effort, say, this wasn't what it was supposed to be about. After 5 o'clock, we were supposed to go home. We had our day event. And then by the evening, it was these other people who are in there and completely undermining.
I had that too when I did the 2010 march against the cuts to education and the NHS and various things in the UK. We got down there like 11 o'clock in the morning. We marched all day. It got to be about 5 o'clock. And this was in January or December. So it was really cold out. It was getting dark early. And as the lights started getting down, there were black bloc people who started making barricades. And when, like I said, like the people who were there with their kids and their strollers at 3 o'clock left, in the evening, London was burning. And that was the story on the media. And that was the only story the media tells when you have those situations. So I felt like my protest was robbed by people who came in at the last minute and made it all about them. It wasn't discussing cuts to NHS anymore. It was, look at so-and-so's rocker's disrespectful son who's hanging from the cenotaph, this memorial to the dead. He got up on one of the flags and started using it like a swing, right? That became the story.
It's the topic of race. It's just people are so determined to push it off the table.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, and I'm personally, maybe because it's ignorance, but I don't remember Antifa going around doing a lot of damage. My impression is they get in fights with white supremacists. Like, that's their thing. They defend people who are being attacked or threatened by white supremacists. So this whole conflation of like everything that's left is Antifa just speaks to kind of American political ignorance as to what kind of political movements are actually in operation that they don't see on the media, represented in Democrats or Libertarians or Republicans every single day. But yeah, so that's been on my, because I did a 2-hour show about it, so it's been on my mind a lot today. And as you say, it's all over Twitter. And I saw my emotions in terms of reacting to what I saw from the protest ranged from getting teared up with emotional, sympathy at seeing people come together and really want to make a change, to absolute frustration with seeing police being violent, with unarmed people putting themselves in front of armed cops, and the terror of that. And just like, it's just, yeah. America's got a real sickness, and it's not, we haven't ever properly dealt with it.
No,
I mean, it's very easy to, because a lot of people, so the name Trump comes up a lot, but to me, I guess the reality is that's a symptom of the disease. I mean, we can talk about chlamydia. There could be like a discharge. I mean, Trump is kind of the discharge, but there's still an underlying chlamydia. Sorry, that's a really horrible analogy, but
I don't actually,
Oh, I think that's thinking of him like that is that seems right on to me.
I'm fine comparing white supremacy to chlamydia like that. I don't have any moral compunctions about that at all. It is like an infection in terms of the peace, what the domestic tranquility of the country, which we've never had, holds out hope for. If we move beyond that infection, maybe if someone said, the words in the Constitution about liberty and justice don't mean anything until everyone has it.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had 200 years of hollow words, really. I'm sorry.
And the scary part is I still see people posting memes about how 45 is the greatest president we've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Like the one that puts there's like this one that's a picture of showing Lincoln, Reagan, and Trump together, and I'm like, one of those doesn't fit.
You know, if we get another 4 years of Trump, he's going to commission his portrait on the Mount Rushmore. You know that we're going to tip in so far into fascism that he's going to try to add his name. I'm sure he would do that.
Well, he's talked about it.
Oh, God,
Well,
of course
considering how, he's taken every liberty he can with the office now.
Yep.
If this country gives him another 4 years, he's just going to run with it.
And another 4 years of William Barr.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And he's going to use that to get back at his enemies because that's who he. And he's going to develop more enemies because, of course, he is.
And McConnell will give him the judges to protect all of his illegal decisions.
That's the big thing. The McConnell plan for federal judges is the scary part. How many between the McConnell and 45? How many have they installed? Like 200 now or something like that. Did you see
what Lindsey Graham did last week?
I don't know.
He announced that if there are any conservative federal judges who are 65, they should retire now. It doesn't matter if you want to keep working for another 5 or 7 years. Just please throw yourself on the. Just let us fill your seat with somebody younger and dumber.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Federal judges, though, are pretty independent, so I don't think too many of them will take him up on that.
Yeah. I mean, far be it from me to ever tell anyone how they should vote or whatever. This is just to take it with a grain of salt with opinions or whatever. But I just think, okay, because I know that there are people who want the Democrat Party to shift, in a certain direction. That's fair enough. But you can only do that by just voting blue. Vote Biden in, and then from that on, if you can secure that, then then maybe we can put pressure on the government. You can have a lot of people like AOC with and a lot of other people who might be a little bit further left to sort of to nudge that across a bit. That's the only way that I can see that being possible.
Yeah, the time to go through the ideological purity test is not before you get power. Like it's get a broad church in or a broad spectrum, get a big tent in, and then when you have governing power, then you can work within your party to put pressure on people. So yeah, I kind of agree with that. But I also think that because America's political spectrum is so wide, that if you don't make a space for the Joe Manchins of the world who are going to vote with you 80% of the time, you're basically surrendering that seat to the Republicans, which makes actually getting the change you want that much harder. So I'm very much sort of like I'd rather have a conservative Democrat in a seat than a liberal Republican. But of course I'm a party person, so I kind of think about things in terms of governance, power, and majorities. So.
Well, I know I made peace with the fact that I would probably have to vote for someone I didn't necessarily like way back in February, and I hope a lot of other people make peace with that fact in the next 5 months. Because I like the steering the ship analogy. You take a freighter that takes forever to turn.
Yeah.
You need to turn a little bit in the direction you want it to go as soon as possible.
Yep.
And that's what we need to do. But at this point, not turning is turning in the opposite direction really hard. Which is going to make it even more difficult down the line.
I'm not sure if it's turning in the other direction. I think we're heading full steam with every coaler throwing in coal into the boiler towards not a reef. We're heading towards a cliff.
Yeah,
we're going to run into a fucking cliff, and we need to start turning that. And the cliff is many things. Climate change is one of those things, but certainly the end of our democracy is more urgent, is more urgently in front of that right now, which is scary because
it also
the destruction of the world that we can live in is not that far away either, and there's a lot of reasons to vote for Biden, even if we don't like him.
Yeah, and I think there's also, we have to remember that you can't judge a candidate simply by what your wish list is and how many of the things on your wish list you're going to get. I mean, if you look at where Barack Obama ran in 2008, Joe Biden is way more progressive, if you think about it, look policy-wise, than Barack Obama was in 2008. Barack Obama wasn't for same-sex marriage yet in 2008. There was no idea of expansion of healthcare. It was just a hope and an idea. There was no massive. I mean, I guess a Paris Climate Change Accord, but climate change wasn't as much of an issue then. Free funding for or tuition-free policies. Obama didn't have that on his platform. Yeah. So Joe's jumping in. So if you actually look at where the policy spectrum, the progressive side, even though they complain they're not, some people complain that they don't get the candidate they want to vote for. They're getting a better candidate than they would have had, in 2008. So you just take the win, accept that you've got some work to do, but also acknowledge that you have had an impact. And I don't hear that as much. I mostly hear what I don't have, not, hey, look at these things we've actually moved forward and we should support these. We can get somewhere on this. So, but I always think of the extreme as being June, who said the only good thing about a Biden presidency would be 4 years of mocking Biden. That's what she's looking forward to. Not defeating Trump or protecting democracy. It's just memeing. Anyway, Joe, how are you?
Hi, Joe.
Hi.
I have that T-shirt. I know exactly what T-shirt
It's very
you're wearing.
good. The Tifa.
Oh, actually, mine's a Hillary Clinton one.
Oh no,
that.
mine's the character from Final Fantasy VII.
Okay. So how you doing, Joe?
Was that your was that part of your shirt haul some months ago?
I have so many. I get so many shirts. The majority of them are like button-up shirts with patterns, because at work there's a dress code and it specifically mentions like size of an icon on your shirt, but it precludes patterns. So like the majority of my shirts are like legit just patterns of licensed characters all over it, because it breaks the spirit of the dress code but not the letter of it.
You're a rebel, Joe.
You're walking the line.
Exactly.
Hey, Joe, in Steve's Hangout, you mentioned something I'd like you to bring up again, if it's okay. You were talking about the policies, about your policies at your workplace, about physical interactions with clients or patients.
Mm-hmm. Patients, yeah.
Yeah, and just comparing that to what we've seen police officers do. Can you run through that again?
What specifically?
Well, you talked about the policies, the steps that you had to.
Okay, so we had to go through a training that specifically went to how to properly contain somebody's arms without harming them, how to apply, or how to safely bring somebody down to the ground or press them against the wall without harming them, how to safely restrain them, and how to maintain a restraint while they're struggling without applying unnecessary pain, unnecessary pressure, and how definitely not to rest any part of your body on places that could cause damage, not even necessarily death, but could cause damage if you for example, not even if your neck, if you were doing a similar thing that they were doing to his neck onto the wrist or parts of the arm, you can heavily damage the blood vessels there and cause lasting harm to somebody if you put your entire weight in certain places. You can wreck somebody's knees by putting weight on the back of their knees like that. You can seriously cripple somebody by doing something similar to their back, or putting any unnecessary weight on their torso, which that was what another officer was doing, just slightly off camera from the shot that we usually see.
Right.
You know, it's
2 other officers on his back.
exactly.
Yeah. So
And they shouldn't have been on his back. Even with the handcuffs, the better placement would be at each of the arm shoulders to prevent side to side motion as well. And a better way to contain somebody for head movement would be to be holding and cradling the head in such a way that the head can't move at all, because somebody could still thrash around. And even in his position, it's possible that he could have bit that officer, which a better way to prevent that would have been to cradle and press down the head.
Mm-hmm.
the bird is lovely,
Yeah.
by the way. Thank you for putting that on
Yeah.
camera. It's really therapeutic.
Yes.
Yeah,
Wonderful
she always
bird.
keeps me company. So this is Memphis.
Hi,
Gorgeous.
Memphis.
Absolutely gorgeous. Yeah,
It's
so when,
you always got to choose a gender. I choose a gender neutral name for because when they're these things, I buy one as a baby, and so we don't know what their sex are. So I've been through Dallas now. This is Memphis, so I'll just go through all the American.
right.
American South, huh?
Yeah.
So
And
because you can't sex them when they're babies. Like you can only observe their behaviors and maybe their coloring of their.
If the plumage is, yeah.
Yeah, and usually the females they're very reluctant to learn how to whistle or sing or talk or anything. So, once they've learned like maybe 1 or 2 whistles, like during the first 3 months of their lives, they think, okay, I know what I need to
They
whistle now. So,
optimize.
all right, I'm done. No more. I'm not learning anymore. But the boys, they just want to keep learning.
Interesting. So, sorry, getting back to the topic, Joe, when you watch the videos or see police officers, poorly restrained, you must have a completely different perspective in terms of like now in criticizing them or critiquing them.
I've honestly only seen pictures because I tried. I couldn't get through more than 5 seconds of that video for those reasons, knowing how easy it would have been to not kill him.
Right.
Knowing that if the officers didn't receive that training, what an indictment it is on that police department and that community that they weren't trained how to properly subdue somebody when subduing somebody is a bigger part of their job than it is mine.
Mm-hmm.
And how criminal it would be if they did receive that training, knew the right way to do it, and didn't.
Yeah.
There's a YouTuber named Nate Brody. I don't know if you heard of him. He's a lawyer. He's a black guy. He's a lawyer, and he was a police officer. And when he was a cop, his job was training people in restraints, how to restrain people. And he went through the procedure, what you do with when you're handcuffing somebody. And one of the things he said, the first thing he said was, when you put handcuffs on somebody, you're their keeper now. You're responsible for their health and welfare. And if they if you have to put them on the face to handcuff them, you turn them over as soon as possible because of difficulty with breathing. Just on the face. And he said he trained that you never put any pressure on the neck or especially upper back because of the problem of breathing, and you certainly don't do it when they're face down. And he said that all the cops he trained, all the police departments he trained that way, to not ever put pressure on the neck or upper back. More recently, I've heard that the Minneapolis Police Department has specific training that you can kneel on, you can put pressure on the neck and upper back, but there are guidelines as to how much. And so they actually have a standard for what he should be able to do. So he was doing what he was trained to do. He was just doing it more forcefully than he should have. So it was a judgment call on his part, and not a that says, no, you never do that, which would have saved Floyd's life.
Mm-hmm.
Probably saved his life. I don't know what else they might have done to him in that situation. But it's
I saw.
This is where you get into the institutional issues with about criminals in general, and certainly in most places, people of color especially.
God, I hate the word criminal. It's bad. It's not a good description because it refers to the person, not necessarily their act, and that word just makes it so easy to not view them as a person, and it's very sad, and I hate it.
Yeah, I don't know where else to go with a lawbreaker. That's more descriptive and less maybe about.
I know. I'm not saying it's just one of those things that gets to me, especially when somebody, when names are known and they just go straight to that, or illegal, or
Yeah, I know what I got you. You're right.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter before we came, we started the Hangout, that Val Demings has called for all police departments across America to voluntarily review their policies. Basically take this opportunity and look at your own policies, and maybe it's time to change the ones that can kill people.
The restraint policies, the discipline policies, the looking over the hiring and transferring policies.
Yeah.
Okay, the comments section in the live stream is kind of heated. I think there was two fellas having a bit of a spat.
Oh, okay.
I haven't even looked at the. I just had a look at it.
Adam wanted me to remove him as a mod, so I'll go ahead and do that now. Yeah. I don't know what's. Yeah, I haven't. I'm sorry, I didn't pop out the chat because we had 3 people on and then 4 people. Well, 5 plus me. But okay. Well, I guess if there's anything that needs to be flagged, I can take a look at it later. So, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of hard for me. Initially, I talked about doing a pub quiz this week, but I kind of didn't feel the energy for it. So, this month. So I'll maybe kick it to next month because it felt more important to, to the extent, the happy hour has been about avoiding coronavirus instead of just talking about it all the time. But I think this topic, kind of, it's been on my mind and I couldn't just push it aside. So, I don't know.
It's because it's easy to fall into them because I saw it on Twitter. I think it's a good thing that it was trending in the Australian Twitter anyway. It was talking about the Indigenous deaths as well. So it's sort of an important issue of race. I think probably one of the worst problems is in the youth detention centres. That's where there's a lot of mistreatment goes on. So especially with Indigenous inmates who are in those custody facilities, some of the things that they've documented are absolutely horrendous, and there's obviously a lot of death in custody, and so that's a huge issue. And as much as Australia, we can look back and say, we don't have these, police shootings or whatever, but it's still the worst sins that are happening in Australia. It's really happening behind bars,
out of sight, kind of thing. Not where you can have a mobile phone easily.
No.
Yeah. So where do people think this is going to go? The protests were called for the weekend, but I'm not quite sure where the energy for this kind of heads off now. What do people think?
Nothing's going to happen. If anything happens, it's going to be a crackdown by the state, state real large, not in individual states. And I think what's going to happen is at the very, very best, there's going to be people taking a look at it, thinking about it, people in authority, ideally. And I have heard some comforting signs from some police agencies that are saying. One, I think in Chattanooga, Tennessee, said the police chief said if you think the cop who killed Floyd was doing the right thing, resign, turn in your badge. So there are people like that, and there are people looking at these issues that we've been talking about. But I think, given given Trump and given the people he listens to and the people that run things, most of the things in the country, I think there's going to just the best situation would be people would wake up and say, well, this is insane. We have to be better with our humanity.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be the outcome. I think the main outcome is going to be cracking down harder on people who are dissenting and who are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, I have also seen sort of glimmers of the full range of from police just shoving civilians for no apparent reason at all into the streets to one place, maybe somewhere in Michigan. I can't remember. I've got it on Twitter. I've got it set up for the happy hour. But a local, I don't know if he was a sheriff or whatever his position was, he was the head of the town police department. And he basically said, look, we're here with you and we agree with what you're saying. And so we've taken off our helmets, we've put down our batons, and we want to march with you.
Cool.
And
I believe that was Flint.
Yeah. And so so he's like, what can we do to help? What can we do to be here? And they're like, march with us. And he's like, okay, let's go.
Yeah. Fargo had a lot of police at the actual event itself. I think they organised it collaboratively because because there's some towns, like I guess smaller communities, where there might be a better relations.
Yeah. That's also, local leadership. When I was doing my background research on Black nationalists and Black nationalism, before we talked about Vaughn's takes on it, one of the things that a woman who was coming from a Black nationalist position says, I don't really think we have a lot of power to change things in the White House directly, but you can participate, get involved in your local politics, because who your local police commissioner is, who your city council member is, who your local DA is, that's going to have a more direct impact on your day-to-day life than Donald Trump. And so,
because Fargo sort of reminded me of what it was like to live in some of those smaller, because I'm kind of in the city at the moment, but when I lived in one of those smaller communities in Australia where there was, I guess the police force wasn't necessarily, about, catching the bad guys and bullying and intimidation or whatever. It's more in terms of, I guess, community outreach, and there's a certain collaborative nature which is there, and it's really rare to associate that with, police force of all things.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, from what I've been told, Fargo is sort of an exception to the real. Because as I said before, I've got a good friend of mine that I talk to every day on Discord, and so she's sort of in the middle of that.
Yeah, for me, I kind of defer to what people of color say about how safe they feel in different places, and so I think that's because America is so big, and because there's a wide range of people. There are other people who want to do the right thing of any background. I played during the happy hour the black cop who was like, I got behind this badge because I want to do right, and when I see something wrong, that's not happening on my watch. I'm going to be the one to step up, and kind of like trying to be the police force that people deserve, the one that actually protects and serves. So,
yeah, Alabama, like they're going to have to be careful, because any of those insurgent groups who are trying to derail that, some of the Black Lives Matter people, they issued a stern warning saying, you're not going to walk out of this safely, because we'll be taking care of you if you try to derail this.
Defend themselves, yeah.
Yeah, which I think it's sad that it has to come to that stage where, the people who are organizing Black Lives Matter and other people who are in there for whatever their agenda is.
Yeah, you didn't have a bunch of people on the left descending on the state legislature to counter protests, the occupation or whatever, and disrupting their stuff. But yeah, white supremacists messing stuff up, that's kind of their bread and butter. So I was wondering if we could just go an hour today, because I did my 2-hour show, then I was on Steve's show. I tried to. The conversation didn't have any natural openings. I think I said all of 5 words between.
Oh yeah, I had like 3 pertinent stories that I wanted to share, but there just wasn't a place for it. You know,
it's all elbows.
It was a very contentful episode.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with calling it pretty quick here too. I'm just between feeling really kind of depressed about what's going on and just my back hurting. It's not bad, but it's at the point where it's going to get bad.
Yes.
If I'm spending too much more time sitting here.
Well, I will try.
Definitely, this is despite the fact that it was a holiday week. This has been a long week emotionally.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes I realize how blissfully ignorant I was when I was half my age, and sometimes I kind of wish for that again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because to be informed now is to either be constantly pissed off or pissed off with yourself that you're not constantly pissed off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. What is that? If you're not angry, you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But and then when you're not paying attention, you guilt yourself for not paying attention. So but I'll try not to leave it to the end of the month. For some reason, even though I had nothing to do this month, there's a sort of like inertia that gathers, like being in lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
And
and what do you call it? The fact that you did the last one right at the end of the last month too.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't want to do it in the first couple of weeks.
yes.
We just did one.
Yes.
Yeah. You could do it on Flag Day.
Oh.
On the 14th, which is the day before my birthday.
Oh.
You could make it all about me.
All right. Well, that sounds like a plan.
which is the way it ought to be, really. I mean, in any decent world, it would be about me all the time.
Do I have a second for the motion?
As good as that sounds, if you were actually doing it on Flag Day, it would be really interesting to do something on how so many people value symbols more than the people and concepts they represent.
Yeah. And how many people who value the flag wear the flag on their as clothing. And
when the old law actually was talking about that and not using it as an item of protest.
Well, the flag code allows you to use it in protest. It's
exactly, but wearing
it as clothing is
don't spoil the episode, guys.
Oh, it's so
well.
good.
Anyway, you said it when you want to, but that would be that's 2 weeks from now.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second for the motion to do a 2-week Flag Day / Tom's birthday / the history of symbolism?
I second.
All right.
Yeah, let's give Tom.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
And
the motion carries.
Well, we will put my shipping address in the notes, and I will expect presents. You got 2 weeks. I think you could probably even get a card here from Australia if you tried.
Drop it in the group. All right.
The funny thing is, I think I still have your address from when you sent me the stickers from the
swag.
What was that? What was that called? The conference. I forget that you went to.
Secular Women Work.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry,
I have one of them on my laptop that I can't show you because I'm using my camera on my laptop.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, I had one on my old computer, and now you reminded me I should put one on my new computer too.
Excellent.
Because we are outraged most of the time. I am outraged most of the time.
Yes. There's lots of stuff to be outraged about in the Trump administration and 2020 and 2016 through 2020. All right. Well, on that happy note, on that happy bombshell, thanks for everyone tuning in and I guess having a rage conversation fight in the chat. I don't know what that was about because I've been running the show. But thank you to my patrons, my friends for coming by and just having a chat about normal life and things and that's on our minds. So it's nice to connect with you across the miles. All right. So from goodbye from me and goodbye from the group. Say goodbye, group.
Bye.
Bye, group.
Goodbye, viewers.